Good morning, rock and rollers, and welcome to a special edition of Box Favorites on WKSN.
Coming in cold, I'm ready to play today. Look at me, I can be Cynthia.
I would like to present to you Ernie Bennett. Thank you very much, Commissioner, for the fine introduction. We got the set in. Sunshine, fresh air. We got the team behind us. So let's play two.
Absolutely, that's the key word. Let's play ball. And this is a special edition of Jukebox Favorites on WKSN. I'm your host, Mr. Nostalgia, Chuck Nalbone, and we are going to get you in the mood for the 1992 Babe Ruth World Series games, which of course can be heard exclusively on WKSN. In our spotlight throughout the morning, we are going to be taking you back in time, back to 1986. A special time for me and for you as you experience this morning my exclusive interview with Babe Ruth's daughter, Dorothy Ruth Pirone.
Weekend Special.
In our spotlight this week, we go back to the year of 1986. When I had the distinct honor and pleasure of speaking with a very special lady. She is the daughter of the great Bambino, Babe Ruth. She is Dorothy Ruth Pirone. Now, she was the guest of honor during the 1986 Babe Ruth World Series games, which were in Jamestown. My introduction to her led me to a wonderful and very special interview, which I'll be sharing with you this morning. To be able to speak with Babe Ruth's daughter, that's sort of a treat. But to be able to really get her views and thoughts of her father, that in itself is very rare. So my first question to Dorothy Ruth Pirone was quite simply, how do you describe your father? How do you describe Babe Ruth?
How would I describe him? I describe him as he had a charisma all his own. He lived for the public. He lived for the children. He loved the children, and he was a very outward man. There was nothing secretive about him. Everything was above board and out in the open. And I think that's nice when you have a figure like he was, to be open. I think it lets the public see a side of an athlete that they don't see out of most of them. And I think that's what makes people want to read about him and still want to know about him, even though he's gone 36 years.
Let's go, batter up. We're taking the afternoon off. It's a beautiful day for a ball game today. The fans are out to get a ticket or two from Walla Walla, Washington to Kalamazoo. It's a beautiful day for a home run, but even a triple's okay. We're gonna cheer and boo and raise a hullabaloo at the ball game today. Batter off, strike one. Hey, the game has just begun and the home team's out to win. Very swing, right two. And the pitcher's dipsy-do. His fastball pop right in. This is it. They're right free. Fans are tearing up the chairs, but what the heck? Who cares? It's a beautiful day for a ball game today. If you and I are out of dollars and cents, oh honey, we can always share a little hole in the fence. It's a beautiful day for the ladies.
This morning, we are getting you in the mood for baseball, Babe Ruth style. And of course, when you think of Babe Ruth, you think of the New York Yankees. Well, of course, every baseball team has a song, and the Pinstripers have their own song, too.
Y-A-N-K-E-E-S. Here come the Yankees. Let's get behind the cheer the Yankees. They're gonna learn to feel the Yankees. Everyone knows they play to win. 'Cause they're the New York Yankees. Show them today why you're the Yankees. No other way when you're the Yankees. What do you say we win a brand new ball game? We're gonna shout when you powder the ball. We're gonna scream, put it over the wall. The other team's gonna know what it means to play the Y-A-N-K-E-E-S. We love the Yankees. Shout it out loud, we love the Yankees. We're really proud of our Yankees, and we wanna win today. 2, 3, 4, hit, run, fight, score, go, go, go. We're gonna shout when you powder the ball. We're gonna scream, put it over the wall, yo. The other team's gonna know what it means to play the Y-A-N-K-E-E-S. We love the Yankees. Shout it out loud, we love the Yankees. We're really proud of our Yankees, and we wanna win today.
You're listening to a special edition of Jukebox Favorites on WKSN. I'm your host, Mr. Nostalgia, Chuck Nalbone. In our spotlight this morning, we are going back in time, back to 1986, for my exclusive interview with Babe Ruth's daughter, Dorothy Ruth Pirone. Well, the New York Yankees have always been controversial, haven't they? And I guess from the time Babe Ruth was a player to now, there have always been highlights and lowlights. But one thing I was curious about, in her opinion, what would Babe Ruth think about Major League Baseball today?
Oh, I don't think he'd be proud of it, but he'd tolerate it, because if it's what the media and the public wants, that's what he would want for baseball. He was very dedicated to baseball, and baseball was his life. He lived it, he breathed it, it was part of him.
My sermon today, said the Reverend Jones, is baseball and whence it came. If you take the good book and you take a good look, you will find the first baseball game. It says Eve stole first and Adam second. Solomon umpired the game. Rebecca went to the well with the pitcher, and Ruth in the field made a name. Goliath was struck out by David. A base hit made on Abel by Cain. And the prodigal son made a great home run. Brother Noah gave checks out for rain. Now old St. Pete was checking errors, also had charge of the gate. Salome sacrificed Big John the Baptist, who wound up a head on the plate. Delilah was pitching to Samson when he brought down the house with a clout. And the angels that day made a double play. That's when Adam and Eve were thrown out. Now Jonah wailed and went down swinging. Later he popped up again. A lion drive by old Nebuchadnezzar made Daniel warm up in the pen. Satan was pitching that apple. It looked as though he might fan 'em all. But then Joshua let go with a mighty blow, and he blasted one right at the wall, shouting, "Come along and let's play ball."
You're listening to a special edition of Jukebox Favorites on WKSN. I'm your host, Mr. Nostalgia, Chuck Nalbone, getting you in the mood for the 1992 Babe Ruth World Series games. In our spotlight this week, we are going back in time, back to 1986, for my exclusive interview with Babe Ruth's daughter, Dorothy Ruth Pirone. Now, there's parts of this interview which I can't share with you, only because there were no comments. What are we talking about? Well, for instance, I asked what she thought about David Kramer of Sports Illustrated and his biography on the great Bambino. Well, no comment. Well, what'd she think about the film, The Babe Ruth Story, starring William Bendix? That also got a no comment. But sincerely, off the mic, she said, "These people just did not portray my father the way he really was." And that's true. Unfortunately, there is that other side to the life of Babe Ruth. So I asked her what she really thought. How did she feel about how the media has treated her father over the years?
I don't think they could ever overuse my father's name. I mean, don't forget, if it weren't for my father, there wouldn't be any baseball. There wouldn't be any reason to have a commissioner or a baseball team. It just wouldn't be. So I don't think the name is overused. And the media has always been very kind to my father. They still are. And there's men in the media today that never even heard his name, never saw him play. They heard his name, but they never saw him play. And I think it's I think it's just marvelous, the respect they have for my dad.
Play-by-play on the radio. Play-by-play.
It's a long one. Deep to left center. Back for Jean Frito. Back. He makes a one-handed catch against the bullpen. Oh, doctor.
Out on the porch in the summer heat, the sound of a southerner's voice filled the street. Me and the redhead were up in the catbird seat. And out in St. Louis it was surely the same. Holy cow, what a baseball game. The sacks are loaded and here comes that man again. And it was play-by-play on the radio. Play-by-play on the radio. Play-by-play, I saw it on the radio. The swing of the splinter to Maggio's glide. The men at the mics made it come alive. Ernie and Mel and Bob was the prince of the guy. Out of thin air, pictures somehow appeared. You could smell the hot dogs and taste the beer. You felt the excitement as the crowd began to cheer. And it was play-by-play on the radio. Play-by-play on the radio. Play-by-play, I saw it on the radio. Play-by-play, I saw it on the radio.
There's a drive. Way back. It might be. It could be. It is. Base hit. Right field. The guy in front of it. Here comes K-line to score. And it's all over.
Jojo swings and there's a long drive hit deep up louder, pictures are coming in fine. And it's play-by-play on the radio, play-by-play on the radio, play-by-play, yesterday and today. Play-by-play, I saw it on the radio. Play-by-play, I saw it on the radio.
It is going. It is going. It is gone.
You're listening to a special edition of Jukebox Favorites on WKSN. How you doing this morning? I'm Mr. Nostalgia Chuck Nalbone, getting you ready for the 1992 Babe Ruth World Series games. In the spotlight this week, we are taking you back in time, back to 1986, for my exclusive interview with Babe Ruth's daughter, Dorothy Ruth Pirone. Now, the great thing about Babe Ruth is the folklore, those wonderful stories. For instance, remember the time he pointed to center field and said he was going to hit a home run, and did? Well, there's many wonderful memories about the great Bambino, and I asked Babe Ruth's daughter which story was her favorite.
No, I'll tell you the truth. My father had many stories. But the one I liked, the man I liked the best was when he hit a home run, he'd watch the ball, he knew where it was going, and he'd run the bases. And as he passed second, he'd tip his hat. And when he went into home, he'd tip his hat. And it was like, I did it for you, you know, the fans. And the fans loved him for it. And he autographed for hours. As long as the children wanted autographs, he'd do them. And I think this made him the man of the hour, the man of the year, the man of all time.
The stadium was built by Ruth, the Iron Horse was in his youth, the Yankees lineup was a murderer's row. And after Huggins' reign, they were champions again, and winning became the only game for Marcia Joe. I'm talking baseball, Bill Dickey and Lazzari, Yankee baseball, Henrik, Andy Carey, Reynolds, Rashi, Goofy's bag of tricks. They knew him in the apple and the sticks, like the Bambino, the Clipper and the Mick. Well, KC took over, the Yankees owned October. Whitey was the chairman of the board. The boss came in to bat with Reggie and the Cat. They ended the skid with Billy the Kid and the Bronx, they roared. I'm talking baseball, Yogi, Moose and Jerry, Yankee baseball, Pepitone and Terry, Ellie Kubek, Munson never quit. The porch and right was Rogers, Ballywick, like the Bambino, the Clipper and the Mick. How about Mel Allen and Larson's perfect game? Garrick's speech, Joe Page the Major, Mickey reaching heights, outrageous, holy cow. The Scooter's got the ball, he should be in the hall. In pinstripe tradition, the Bomber's only mission is to wind up in the Classic in the fall. New names join the old, another team unfolds. You can bet they'll be ready with Goose and Rigetti, so let's play ball. I'm talking baseball, Louisiana Lightning, Yankee baseball, Winfield's powers frightening, Bucky Nettles, Willie, Lou and Rick. We love them all with lemon or the stick, like the Bambino, the Clipper and the Mick. The Bambino, the Clipper and the Mick. Joe Deep, Joe Deep, Joe Deep, Bambino. Sultan of SWAT. Look at him trot.
Joe D, Joe D, Joe D.
Bambino, Joe and Nick.
Joe D, Joe D, Joe D.
The Oklahoma Kid, oh, how he could hit.
Joe D, Joe D.
How can you say thank you in a very special way? Well, those are my very thoughts right now. I'm ending this tape in a very personal way with a very special thank you to all the members of the Babe Ruth World Series committee, and in particular to Mr. Jim Abdella, and of course to Mr. Russ Dietrich, and to my friend Greg Peterson. It's hard to really describe the honor and the pride that has been bestowed on me, and of course I share that with all my colleagues and friends at WKSN Radio. To be able to realize my efforts and my true interest in baseball have been taken to this extent, it leaves me speechless, but with a lot of pride and a wonderful memory. I thank you for this honor, and I hope that in our best efforts we have done you proud. I thank you for allowing WKSN and my program to be inducted into the Babe Ruth World Series archives. It's a home run that I'll never forget.